We have a question. It's actually it's a topic stroke question today from a listener, a gentleman called Nick Pettigrew. Motivation versus discipline, or discipline versus motivation, and what to use when. So, what to use in what situations? Um, I love this topic. I have a, I actually have a ton of thoughts about this, but I'm really keen to hear what comes to mind for you, or what you've been noodling on since I shared this topic with you a couple of days ago.
The first thing that springs to mind is motivation is obviously, your personal willingness to get after something, right? That's like the fire in your belly. Whereas discipline in my language is is the practice. It's not always the fun part. It's the it's the committed practice that, and I think the two for me go hand in hand. And so uh, I understand. So in my world, there are certain things that I just have to do in order to run my business or run my life a certain way. Am I always motivated to do it? Hell no. Like, absolutely not. However, I appreciate that there's a discipline that I need to practice, um, and and the emotions that I have to go through in order to get sort of check things off, get good at things, and sometimes it's just stuff that I just have to tolerate. Whereas motivation is all about like what is the profound sense of purpose that I'm connected to, and do I have the willingness to go after this thing? And so I guess from to get at sort of Nick's comment or question, it's a case of having a conversation with the person who, whether you're in the leadership or maybe it's your kids or whoever, but having a conversation where the one the one element of it is appealing to that fire in the belly and determining whether, you know motivation even exists. Like, is this something that somebody even feels a sense of connection to, or are they kind of fired up about it or not? um and if they are, wonderful, because the discipline to then go and execute is probably not a major issue. But if they're not motivated, um it's then appealing to the logic to say, hey, I get it. We don't always get to do the things that we are motivated by, but sometimes we just have to go through the practice and the discipline of 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 of, of going through the motions. And and so that's what came up for me immediately. um and I think that it applies to when you're firing up your team. It, there is, I think, if you've got a healthy dynamic, there is a deep appreciation for the discipline required to execute. But then there's also, um, there's a role that motivation plays in appealing to the emotional side of the team, and getting them fired up. So that's what came up for me when I thought about this topic.
Hmm. Well, like this, like I think that you've put tons on the table, which I'm going to dive back into. I have a slightly, I guess I've got a slightly different perspective on it. Some of it's the same, and some of it's slightly different. Which is, for I think motivation is misunderstood. So, I think there's a distinction between what is your motivation and feeling motivated in the moment. So where I totally agree with you is motivation is like what's your why? Like why are you doing anything? Like before you even think about discipline or practice, which I love where you went there and I totally agree. It's like what's the why? So for example, I was just thinking about in the context for me it's an easy one of wanting to live a long and healthy life. Like wanting to live as healthily as I can for as long as I can. That is my motive. Like that is a that's I have a deep sense of deep motivation for that. And there's a really interesting thing, like the origins of the word motivation comes from, I think it's the Latin word movere, which is to move. So it's like, what is it that will move you to action? And so what is it that would move me to action to go to the gym or to eat healthily or whatever? My motivation is I really want to be as healthy for as long as I can, both for myself, for my kids, uh, for quality of life. The challenge that I think arises is that people think, well, if I'm really clear on my motivation, then I should feel motivated all the time. And I think the feeling of motivation, feeling motivated is a state. And you and I have talked about the closed fist and the open hand. And if we're relying on always feeling motivated, then we've set ourselves up for failure straight away because some days you feel motivated and other days you don't. Like it just comes and goes. And so I think you've got to be clear on what your motivation is, the bigger or the deeper motivation. And then I think discipline for me, you use the word willingness. I think that's what discipline is. Discipline is your willingness to take the actions you know to take in service of your motivation, regardless of how you feel. So, for example, again, just using the gym, and I think we can apply this into teams, but I'm just keeping on a simple personal one. It's like if I'm clear on my motivation, some days it's just you get up and you like feel motivated and you like get your gym gear on, you go for a run or whatever it is, and that's perfect. But on a dark, cold morning in December, and you don't feel like going to the gym, but it's your willingness, your discipline. You've got to rely on discipline then to step in and do it. It's like if I'm clear on my why, then my discipline is the how. My discipline is my willingness to take the actions. And I think the practice that I would put in, I think the practice is the what. So discipline is no, I've like made the decision that I'm willing, and then let's just say it's again in the it's like, well, my practice is going to be I'm going to go for a run 5 times a week. I'm just making it up, or I'm going to hit my Peloton bike 5 times a week. That's going to be my practice,
Mm,
and
mm,
discipline is going to be the bridge between my motivation, my reason, and the practice. It's like I'm clear on what it is that's moving me to take action. I also know what that action looks like because I've kind of taken the time to go, what is the practice? And discipline is my willingness to show up despite what I might be feeling in the moment. That's kind of how I connect those things up.
yeah, I really like where you've taken that, um, and I think you've created a sort of a great analogy with the gym story. Um, but I would go so far as to say, like, discipline is the really hard piece. Like, certainly in my world, you know, it's the most difficult. It's the most difficult, and I mean, it's a verb, right? Like, so it's it, it it's the hardest action to take, in that equation. And so you, like, you going back to the gym thing, it's like getting up on the cold morning. It's 5:30 in the morning, and you know you've got to go do this because you know your why. You know what you're going to do when you get there. But but actually getting in the car and, you know, being sort of walking through the freezing rain and doing that whole thing, getting your water bottle ready at 5:30 in the morning, or pulling on your shoes or whatever it is. Like, but and I think, going back to your comment about the closed fist and the open hand, it's totally unreasonable for us to feel motivated all the time, like you said. But I think when you're in that closed fist mindset, which is probably what happens when you stumble out of bed at 5:30 in the morning, and it's like it's pitch black, and maybe you haven't had the best night's sleep, and you're like, "Oh my god, like what the hell am I doing?" When you're in that place, I think part of the discipline is acknowledging where you are at and having the self-awareness to acknowledge where you are at, and then having the discipline to put one foot in front of the other with that knowledge, or carrying that knowledge. And so you can look at yourself and go, geez, I'm in a foul mood, I've slept badly, and I really don't want to go to the gym. I just don't have the energy. You then acknowledge where you're at, observe yourself in that place, and go, but I know what's going to happen. I'm going to put my one foot in front of the other. I'm going to go downstairs. I'm going to get my water bottle. I'm going to get in the car. I'm going to drive to the gym. I'm going to work out. I'm going to feel amazing. And I've got my really cool routine, and like, personally, I now run for 3 miles on the treadmill, and then I go and do my weights, and and at the end of it, I feel like $1,000,000. And so I know what I'm going to do, and I know how I'm going to feel. But the discipline is acknowledging where you're at and putting that one foot in front of the other, irrespective of whether the willingness is high or the willingness is low. that's uh, that's how I view it.
Well, yeah, like, well, I might say, irrespective of whether the feeling of willingness is high or the feeling is low, and because you really call something out here that's so important, and I think whether it's Nick or me or you, is our thinking is not the truth. So when we wake up in the morning and it's 5:30, the thoughts that pop into our head are not the truth. Like, and so it's knowing where we're at, and then being able to go, like, is that true? Like, do I really not want to go to the gym? And because here's the choice. Like, this is the very simple choice. Like, if someone wants, like, if they're really clear in their motivation, and I want to come back to a story on this around, we're either clear in our motivation and we're committed to it, or we're not. And that's a moment by moment decision. Like, sometimes we are and sometimes we fall off, but like, that's the decision we're making, is which am I going to, which direction am I going to lean in? The momentary kind of unhelpful thinking that I've got at 5:30 a.m., or the deeper clarity that I have because I've spent time getting clear on what my motivation is? Which am I going to be in service of? And that's a real choice. And you know what? Like, and I'm not talking from any saintly position here, because anyone who's known me any length of time knows that, like, I have spent a decent proportion of my life being rather unhealthy, and obviously so. Um, it is a real personal responsibility thing. People, the storyline, the illusion that gets in the way is that we need to feel motivated. And then people go, why don't I feel motivated? It's like, because you don't feel motivated all the time. Like, welcome to the real world. And, if you want to, let's say, be successful at anything, or you're really clear on, like, oh, I'd love to let's say someone says, I'd really love to start my own business. Like, I have a deep desire to start my own business. It's like, well, here's the truth of that. It's going to be freaking hard. There's going to be moments where you're going to think, God, I fucking don't want to run my own business. I like, there's no part of this that feels good right now. I've got people relying on me. I don't have a steady income. Um, I've got a runway that looks like it's running out, and it's going to be freaking hard. And then you know what? Like, then you've just got to get up and go anyway. And the probably the biggest difference between I think the biggest difference between lots of people is the acceptance of that. I think the ones that rise through a combination of motivation and discipline are the ones that really accept the truth of life, which is it is a freaking roller coaster daily. And when you're riding a wave, that's the easy stuff. When you are when you're coming off a wave and you're tumbling under the water and being smashed into the sand and thinking, "Oh my god, like I don't know where this is going to go." Like they're the moments that actually really matter, and that's where you've got to rely, as you say, on the combination of motivation and discipline. If you haven't done the work to really understand your why, then chances are that discipline just wears out because willpower is a finite resource. But if you've got clear motivation, then you really rely on your discipline connecting to that. It's like, well, I'm willing, like I'm going to really push into it. And it made me think of there's a quote from Stephen King, and he said, amateurs sit and wait for inspiration. The rest of us just get up and go to work. And there's a simplicity of that I like, which is if you just change the word inspiration for motivation, it would be like amateurs sit and wait for the feeling of motivation. The rest of us just get up and go to work. Um, and there's something about that I just quite like the simplicity of it. Um, so I'll pass it back over to you, and then I'll tell you a quick story in a minute, which is just something very real for me, which is a perfect example of this, and it's quite simple. But I don't know if there's anything that you wanted to chip in there because I've been talking for a little while.
No, I love that Stephen King quote, by the way. But it's I just wanted to make the point about this concept of practice. Um, I think I think that uh, for a lot of us, we want a shortcut, and and even if you sort of understand the why and the sort of you have a profound sense of connection to a purpose or a cause or whatever motivates you, like we're always looking for a shortcut. Human beings are they're so good at it. We've been we've been conditioned to take the path of least resistance. But I think it's acknowledging the practice that is required in order to run a business for yourself, or to be a phenomenal leader, or to find your true sense of everlasting peace and happiness, to be a great parent, to be a great partner to your spouse, or whatever it is. These are things that just require great practice, and and the the beauty of that is is on offer if you, to your point, exercise the free will to engage in that practice, and then you fall in love with the the drumbeat of the discipline. You fall in love with the action, the doing of the discipline. Um, and I think I gave this example. It must have been on one of our first podcasts. When I take a shower, Vanny always says to me, like, use the squeegee and you've got to clean the shower glass because it leaves streaks on the glass. Now, it it drives me insane because I turn the shower off. I'm lovely, I'm hot, I'm just cozy, and then I have to squeegee the freaking glass, and it kills the joy of the shower for me. Well, that's what I used to think. And then I was like, in that example, the why for me was I love Vanny. I get what she's saying. It does streak the glass. It does look shit. And um, so I'm going to do this. Now, um, I can stop being a baby and I can figure out a way to do this that brings me great joy. And I did. I figured out a way, and I actually now have this kind of pattern that I do when I do the glass, and this motion that I do, and it brings me great joy because I feel like I'm one of those highly adept window cleaners in England that you see that can do like this massive pane of glass in like a couple of seconds. But I've like that practice of acknowledging where I'm at, choosing to ignore the ridiculous thoughts that had me feeling a certain way, and then engaging in the practice of doing it, and being disciplined about it every time I had my shower, has just created a completely different experience. Um, and it's yeah, it's such a silly example, but it's this idea of engaging in the practice that ultimately becomes your discipline. um and because discipline often has very negative connotations, I think, and people sort of, the motivation piece is the fun bit, the discipline is the hard bit, but it can be beautiful. Like, you can work beautifully, boat travail.
Like, well, like I don't think your example is silly at all. I think it's a great example, but I think there's a nuance in what you're saying that's really important to draw out, which is like you got curious. You're like, well, like, why do I want to do this? Well, I want to do it because I love my wife, and actually, I also think that it looks shit with the streak, so I want to do it because I like it when it's clean, and so there's that. But then the next part, which I heard, was like, what will make this? Like, you got really curious about creating the practice that worked for you, you know? So, like, what I hear is like, I'm just kind of going, well, so why do I want to do this? What is my motivation here? And the reason I'm walking this through is for myself and for the listener is, you know, when we get curious, the answer's there, but we have to get curious. So it's like, why bang, wife, clean shower? Well, like, what's the practice? Well, the practice is the squeegee. And you're like, you know what? If I do it in this way with this design, and if I imagine I'm just like the guy in London, like that's, yeah, I can actually make this practice enjoyable. So that's the practice. And then the discipline is doing it every time you have a shower. The willingness to, when you remember and you go, yeah, I know I'm in a rush, but like that's bullshit. Like I'm not buying into that. Like you pick your squeegee up and you do it. Um, and so I really just pointing to like getting curious about both those questions. And then the discipline is like, are you going to just either you're going to do it or you're not going to do it? And the discipline is the boring bit, which is, well, how long do I have to do it? Well, you do it for as long as you fricking want a clean shower and a happy wife. And whenever that changes, then like stop doing it. But if that's still true for you, then keep doing it. And and it's so funny because and I do find it funny, and I'll tell you like my story, which was from last month. I'm part of this there's a group that I'm in called it's called a Freedom Group, and it's with a bunch of guys and girls that it started by a friend of mine called Rob Cressy, and people should go and check out his stuff, robcressy.com, because he's actually giving a whole bunch of goodness away for free at the minute, and it's amazing, like some programs and stuff. But this idea is just really simple. It's monthly conversations about like what does it mean to be free. Anyway, Rob set a challenge for last month, which was can you ground yourself to the earth for 21 days in a row and post a picture into the group. And it was really simple. It was like with your bare hand or your bare foot, once a day, just go out anywhere, find a patch of earth, and just get grounded. Like just get present with yourself, see how that feels, post a picture onto the group. So everyone was like, "Yep, I'm going to do it." I was like, "Yeah, no problem. I'm going to do it." I did it 11 out of 21 days. Like it was a spectacular failure. And but I was laughing with Rob. I said, like, what the fuck is going on here? How hard can it be to touch the earth for 21 days? And it turns out it's harder than you'd imagine. Because I and literally it like opened my mind to ah, I hadn't really taken the time to go like, why am I actually doing this? So I'd never gotten clear on my why. I wasn't really connected to it. There wasn't that level of commitment, and therefore there was no consistency. There was no discipline. And it blew my like it's really opened my mind to the truth of what we're saying. It's like, don't make it was the perfect lesson for me because what it showed me was sometimes we just don't slow down enough to get clear. So we'll be like, yeah, 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 no problem. Like I'll do that. And you mentioned teams at work, or so this can be on a personal level. I think this could be in the context of family, or I think it could be in the context of teams, where we're a little bit too flippant to go, yeah, no problem. Like I'll do that. Will you do that every week? And whether it's your squeegee example, and we go, yeah, yeah, that shouldn't be a problem, because the action looks so simple. It's like, of course, I can touch the ground for 21 days in a row. Because touching the ground, like grounding to the earth, that is easy. But doing it every single day is hard if you're not clear on why you're doing it, and if you're not really committed to it because there's no emotional connection. Um, and that's the trap. The practice bit kind of looks easy because it's like, well, how hard is it to squeegee your shower? Well, that's not hard. Of course, I can do that. How hard is it to touch the ground? Well, that's not hard at all. How hard is it to make some dials every day, or um, how hard is it to go to the gym? Like these things are not hard in isolation. They're actually a walk in the park. And that's the problem, because everyone's like, "No, it's easy." And it's like, "Yeah, no, that's easy. Doing it for the next 100 times. You up for that?" "Oh god, I don't know." "Well, then you better get clear on your why, because if you're not clear on your why, believe me, you won't do it for 100 times. If you are clear on your why and you haven't gotten clear on the what, like, what's the what? Like, what way do I wanna do this that I'm gonna fucking fall in love with it? And chances are, if you just go with the thing that you like, someone else says you should do it that way, you probably won't do it for very long because you're kind of not doing it in the way that you would like to do it. But if you are, then chances are discipline will become easier. And I'm going to say it's like I think it's starting to look for me like the formula is simple. The question is, do we actually take the time just to get really clean and clear on it and accept inside of us, like kind of go, yeah, actually, that's all aligned. And if it's not, can we be brave enough? And I say brave or courageous enough to say no. Yeah, sorry, like I'm not going to do that. Why? Because I actually don't want to. I've no reason to do that. And that's hard for people. And I'd love to hear your views on it, Billows, because I think that's what gets people into trouble. They think maybe I have no willpower, or maybe, I'm just not very good. And I'm like, maybe you just don't want to do it. And you've not just actually admitted that to yourself and gone, yeah, I don't want to do that. It's not important to me, because that's fine. But no need to suffer.
Well, I think there's a whole conversation on that one. I mean, you know, the ability for people to sometimes say no from a place of awareness is, I think, escapes a lot of people. Um, and I think a lot of people feel that they have to go and do things because of accumulations, socialization, attachments, and the fear of being judged. And so that is a whole topic all on its own. But there was one thing that I wanted to kind of point to, which is an insight I had while you were talking. When you do acknowledge where you're at, so you are coming at this from a place of awareness, and you engage in the discipline, however pleasant or unpleasant you thought it would be, um, and you start to pull on that curiosity thread, and you start to take delight, and you start to see it for what it is, and what it could be. Um, what I think is really interesting is, for me, it always ends when you pull that thread. It always ends in a profound sense of gratitude. And the interesting thing that I've noticed since kind of having this awareness that we keep speaking about, and believe me, folks, and I'm saying this to the listener, like, I am at the beginning of my journey in terms of the awareness piece. But what I have noticed is a profound sense of gratitude creeps in. And the more I practice it, the more I identify my motivation, my why, the more I then cultivate my practice, the more curious I get, the more grateful I feel, the easier it is for me to be disciplined about a whole range of things. And I'm not disciplined about things that I don't want to engage with. I mean, there are certain things, admittedly, that I still do, that I am pretty disciplined about, that I shouldn't do, and I'm dealing with that. That's my own little project that
Well,
I'm
come
working
on,
on.
brother. Like
But
let's
for the
let's
most
let's draw them
part,
out.
okay, so there are probably times when I am doing bits of work for companies that I don't really want to do, and the narrative in my brain is, okay, I got to do this because I've got to earn a certain amount of money to keep the lights on, and afford my family the rock and roll lifestyle that they're used to. And so I'm going to go do this work, and actually I love the people. but but what I've found is, even in those situations where my motivation is probably a little misguided, um and my practice now is becoming, I'm very resistant to use the words like well honed, because it's not like I'm still very much at the beginning of my journey, but my practice is becoming disciplined enough now that I instantly can switch to a curiosity get to a place of gratitude, and I'm so trusting in the universe that I often see things that I would never have seen had I not engaged in that activity. And so the discipline of getting through that body of work or engaging in the activities that I need to just becomes so much easier. And and it's 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 not a chore. It's not difficult. It becomes easier and easier. And I've noticed this, and I've often sat and just pondered this. It's and it carries over. It spills over into your personal life. Like, somebody will ask me to do something. I might be in the middle of an activity, and somebody will ask me to do something, and because it's somebody I love, I instantly get up and I go and do it. And that practice of instantly becoming present with them, quickly assessing like whether this is something that I should or shouldn't do, and then going and doing it, is it's yeah, it's just happening easier and easier. I don't know, I'm becoming less grumpy about being interrupted. I'm becoming less resentful of being asked to do all these things and do chores and things. There's a surrender that happens, and a gratitude that creeps in, that you are actually able to do it. And I always think about Thich Nhat Hanh. I don't know why I always think of this one thing, but he says, like, when you're having a pee, be grateful that you can have the pee because you don't have a urinary tract infection. Like, that's just the fucking weirdest thing to like latch onto, but it's something that just plays out in my mind the whole time. And so I'm like, oh, well, when you when you're doing something for a company that you don't necessarily want to do, you're like, be grateful that you get to do this. Be grateful that you get to engage with these people and solve these problems, and 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 develop the practice of finding these rhythms and working through these solutions. Like, be grateful for that because it brings great joy. It's a weird thing that's happening, and I know I'm being clumsy with it. Like, I'm not articulating it the best way, but it is fucking weird, dude, and it feels really good.
Well, like I don't I don't think you're being as clumsy as you might think you are. So whatever that means. But I'm really glad that we've drawn that out. And like, so I'm just going to play back because I think in your humility, people, I want to draw out what's amazing in what you said, um, because like, hey, we're all at the beginning of our journey, and yet you're also further along than you were, and so I think it's just pointing to the practice and to how clearly you do see certain things. And so if I was to draw out when the reason I stopped you and wanted to hear where you were saying, well, there are areas where I'm still being disciplined about things, even though my motivation might have shifted. I think there's a really important point there for people to see is number one, like these are not like hard stops, black and white moments. Like they're kind of transient. It's like life. It's the flow of the river. We're in the flow of the river, and the river is changing, and we're changing, and we are the river, and that all that good stuff. It, the important point that I hear in that is, oh, you're noticing your motivation is changing, but you're staying true to you're staying true to your commitment as well. Like at some point, you're very likely to turn around to someone and say, "Hey, this is no longer something that I want to do, and so I'm having this conversation with you from a place of awareness. There's nothing wrong here, but I now want to instigate something, a change." At which point, the discipline and the practice, that particular thing will fall away. But until you do that, you're staying true to the discipline because it's like, no, like it is changing, but I'm still being true because I love these people. And so at some point I might change this, but for now, it turns out that this is where I'm at right now. And so I'm still being disciplined about my practice in service of this because I haven't changed. I haven't acted upon what's shifting, but I'm noticing that it's shifting. And it's almost to me, it's like seeing that that's cool. It's like we don't have to be instantaneous in these things. And the other, so I just wanted to draw that out specifically because I think as human beings, we're too quick to want to make everything like have perfect angles and symmetry and it must be instantaneous. It's like, no, these things shift over time and we notice something when we notice it and then it's like, oh, that's interesting. I wonder where that's going to lead, but I'll stay the course. And the second thing I wanted to draw out, which I really do see this as, I think I've said it a few times on here, where you're further down the road from me in terms of um, that kind of acceptance. I think I'm moving through it, but I think that for me, when I heard you say about gratitude and that feeling of gratitude, I hear that as the feeling we get when we're really being true to ourselves, like when we're kind of really listening and to your point, you're just like, oh, right, okay, yep. Well, I guess I'm going to go and do that because I'm not engaging with my intellectual kind of. I'm not relying on my intellect. You're not Sorry, Brian. Just let me start that again. Because what I hear in that, Billows, is that you've kind of parked to a degree your intellect, and you're more now relying on your inner GPS, if you will. So you're like, oh, okay, I guess that's where I'm going, the universe and you. And as you do that, and as you listen to what's coming up in you, you have this profound sense of gratitude that you keep getting rewarded with almost. It strikes me as sometimes it's just like a pleasant surprise. It's like, oh, who knew? There it is again. Like I get to have this profound sense of gratitude, even though it was something that I thought I might not have enjoyed. Turns out I actually get this anyway because I didn't resist it and, kind of like Thich Nhat Hanh and, going for a pee. It's like, oh, who knew that I was going to actually get this sense of gratitude in this situation because I get to see that perspective. And I guess that just feels very powerful to me to open up that possibility of, you know, staying true to the deeper knowing or wisdom that exists in all of us beyond the transient nature of our thinking in the moment. And 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 I think that is where discipline and practice really serves us. It kind of, it's the kind of boring, not very sexy gateway to a lot of good feeling and gratitude in the moment.
But it's very interesting what you just said there, and it just sparked something for me. At what point do motivation and discipline morph into the same thing? At what point does your profound sense of awareness and being and and your sense of being connected to a path that is it's the great unfolding, right, to use Christie's words, like when you feel a connection to that and you're kind of following your nose, you're not following your intellect. At what point does motivation and discipline become part and parcel, become fused? And it literally is the same. It is just your daily practice because it's the guide, it's the ever present clarion call that moves you with delight. And you've learned to move with delight because your practice is strong, and what you're listening to or what's driving you is doesn't come from anything other than just a profound sense of awareness. I don't know. Does that make sense?
My perspective is this: I have no idea when they merge, or where they do. I kind of, for me, I see it as a both end. Like I really believe in vision and dream, a vision more than dreams. Like that, the universe whispers into our soul big dreams and small steps would be how I would describe it. And that to me perhaps is the fusion of motivation and discipline. It's like big dreams and small steps, and they both live right here, right now. It's like um, if someone said to me, "Oh, what's the big dream?" I can tell them. Like I envision like my family in different scenarios as the boys have grown up, and like there's things that I feel very drawn to and have so much good feeling about being in service of all the time. And I know that all I have to do is just be here now and take the next step. And so I hold both of those things as gently as I can, and I'm like, huh, that is what I see that I fucking love and I'm excited about, and that is my motivation. And it's not anything, it's not the future, it's just what the universe is, what's in me, like in this version of me. And what have I got to do about that? Absolutely nothing. Just take the next step and the next step and see where that leads. So that would be my answer to it. That's how it looks to me right now. But I think it's a great question. Like if I was to throw that back at you and say, like, how would you answer if you like how does it look to you to take your own question and go, well, this is how it looks to me.
Yeah. Well, what comes to mind is what you sometimes say to me, like, do you know what you want to do? Yep. Do you know what you have to do? Yep. Okay, go do it. Stop thinking about it. And it's like, and it's like, so it's the Al Kenny kind of fusion of the two, and it's the reason I asked the question is because I as a inherently lazy human being, I love some simplicity, and I love distilling things down to the nectar. And so when you think about, okay, what's my motivation and how do I develop the discipline, and and then you're like, okay, the 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 more I acknowledge my come from, and the more I operate in that place of awareness, and I'm on that lightning path despite myself, and I don't have to do anything, then is there this wonderful fusion of those two things, and that becomes the little drop of nectar that falls out the bottom of the intellectual machine, and you can just scoop it up, put it on your tongue, and have a smile because actually there's no such thing as motivation or discipline. There's just operating from your place of awareness.